Hey everyone, and welcome to the Creative Weekly Wisdom. And today I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to do some simple background watercoloring. And we're going to start off today using this watercolor paper from Strathmore. And this is what the pad looks like. And it comes with 12 sheets, and they're 9 by 12, so it might not seem like a lot, but they're large sheets so that you can definitely cut them down. Usually I don't use more than like a quarter of the sheet at a time per project, so it does turn out to be a lot of uses per pad. Also, you can get this at most craft stores, so I prefer this particular one. I found that it works better than some of the other watercolor papers. I'm not sure what the difference between the cold press and the hot press is, but I find that this does take the watercolor a lot easier and absorbs a lot of water and a lot of color. So I really do like this, and it doesn't warp a ton, especially if you tape it down. This is the 300 series, and you can use a coupon because it's available at Hobby Lobby, Joann's, and Michael's. So it's really easy to find this. And they do have a lot of sales, I find, too, so that's really good as well. So what I'm going to also have today is I'm going to be working with some 3M tape here. And this is the micropore tape, which is like the medical tape, but it's a very thin tape, and it's a low tack tape. You can get this on Amazon. I'm sure you can even get it at Walmart, you know, places like that. But I got it on Amazon in this big 24 pack, so this will last me a lifetime. I've had it for probably about 4 years or so, and I have not even used a full roll yet. I don't watercolor every day, so, you know, I don't need it. It works really good for holding down like dyes and things too when you're die cutting, so I really like this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this down, and why you want to tape this down is so that it doesn't warp as you're watercoloring. This way you have a flatter surface to work with. Now it will bubble up some because you are really soaking it, but it's not going to like be all kind of funky and really hard to work with, and then your colors will run, so you won't have any of those issues. The micropore tape is waterproof, so wherever you stick it down, it will not color through, and it's low tack, so it will not rip your paper, which is one of the best things about this tape. What I'm going to be using is this hardboard here. You do not want to use anything that will soak up water, so chipboard will not work for this, cardboard will not work for this. You want a hard surface. This works, or your tabletop. You can try and use your craft mats as long as they don't stain. You do have to be careful because you don't want to stain your craft mats. And even though it's watercolor, sometimes I use other things as watercolor, like ink, and that will stain your mats. So you kind of want to be careful what you're putting down. So I prefer this board. And this board is a 9 by 12 hardboard panel. I will have it down below with the supply list where I got this from, so that you guys can pick it up. So today I'm starting with this Untitled watercolor palette. Now this is a very luxurious palette, so it's definitely not something that you have to have. You can have plain watercolors like for the kids. They're nowhere near as pigmented, but they do the same thing. These are very highly pigmented, meaning if you add water to one of the pans and you go to put it down, it really looks like acrylic paint. It doesn't look like you're using watercolors. That's how thick and creamy this stuff is. So I like to not use it directly on the paper once I take it out of the pan, because then you end up with a really harsh area of color when you're trying to really get your colors to blend all over the place. So I like to put it on an acrylic block and then add even more water to that to water it down even further. And you'll see, even with the like extra watering down, it's very pigmented. So this is the largest pan that they sell. They have smaller ones. I think they have 3 different sizes. So you can, if you want to start out and you don't want to fork out for the big one, you can get the smallest one. And I also think they sell these ones in particular. These are like their metallic and pearl and white. They have a set that's just for these. I found these on Amazon, but I know that nowadays there's a lot of online craft stores that also carry this particular set. but you don't have to have this. So if you've watercolored before and you've used plain watercolors, you know what I mean. You don't have to have the fancy. But this is really nice because it's really, really rich in color, and you get a lot of different colors. It is not a USA made product, and it is in another language. So that's the only downfall, is because you don't know the exact color names and stuff like that, and because it is so rich, sometimes you can't tell what the exact color is, because these all look pretty close together, but they're not. They're very different. Now the lid itself comes with an area where you can swatch the colors, and it does have a little thing that says number. So it may not have a color name, but if you swatched it, you could match the number up to the pan and see, oh, that's that number. Another thing I really like about these is the pans themselves. The little pans do come out. You can see, so if you don't have to take this whole thing, if you're just using one little thing, or you can customize it, or, you know, if you have a smaller little container and you don't use all these colors, you can do that as well. So to start off here, for your background, enough about the watercolors, right? Okay, so you want a big brush, and you want to soak the whole background in water before you do anything. This helps all the colors just move around. And that is all you're going for. You just want these colors to really move. So you're going to put down quite a bit of water here. And I just brush over it. Spread all that extra water out all over. And it is watercolor paper, so don't be afraid to put a ton of water down. Not going to hurt it. I also like to have a spray bottle set aside with water in it, so that once you start getting colors down, and if you want them to spread out and blend a little bit more, or the edges of the colors to be a little bit softer, you can spray it. I do not suggest adding more water with your brush and once you got the color down, because all you're going to do is streak your colors everywhere. So water bottle is what you want. Okay, so I'm just going to take this slightly smaller than the one we just used, but it's not a teeny tiny brush either. That's good for getting a lot of color in a lot of places. So we're going to just start, and I'm just going to start watercoloring, and let's you see. Okay, so that, look, look how, that does not look like watercolor, right? If you had a regular watercolor set, that is not the color you would see. The pigment would be very translucent. So I'm adding tons of extra water to this, and it's still very rich and creamy and pigmented. This is definitely a product you would probably have your entire life because it's so now we're just going to start, and you can see it's even still too thick for my liking. I like to really have this move. And that's why also I said you can spray it, and it just fell off the thing. So with watercoloring, you don't have to be super specific. You can have a pattern, but the whole point is it not, and it just turns out however it turns out. Okay, so I'm already going to spray because I do want this to be a little bit thinner, and the next colors will actually move around a bit more. Okay, now you can dry in between your colors, or you can do what I'm going to be doing and just letting them kind of run into each other a little bit. You do want to be careful not to let them run into too much, or they start turning into other colors, sometimes even brown, and that is just something that you don't want. Okay, so I'm going to do a few more colors, and I'm going to do this fairly quickly so that we can, because my camera is going to die soon. Get this yellowy orange, kind of going for a little bit of a summery spring feel here. And you can see how it melds into a different color. Now you can dry in between, which is a good thing if you're a beginner and you want to be careful. You can dry everything, and then you can layer your colors. You can also, if you have, like, say I don't like this little patch right here, while it's still wet, you can take a paper towel and then completely remove the color and start over again. This way you're not really losing your watercolor paper, and you can just start over, or if it's just one little spot versus the whole thing, or if it's the whole thing, you can just go over. If you let it soak in a little bit more and dry like halfway, you can take a paper towel over it and just lighten up the color, not necessarily move it away. Had I dried it a little bit and let it soak in, I would have lightened it instead of completely moving that spot. Okay, so now we're just going to start with another color. Now this one is super rich, so I'm trying to really water it down. I want it to be more pink than red, and I will lighten it if I need to be. And you can soften this up as much as you want. It doesn't have to be as vibrant as it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and spray. And you can see the color moving around. You can see how, now, one thing I do like about these boards is that you can move the color around as much as you wanted to. This would be really good if you had dried in between and done this so that your colors didn't kind of run together. But you can see how much different this looks once you let it run and really take on its own life. And that's also how you can get those running streaks and stuff like that. You can really get it to do a lot of things. Okay, so now I'm going to show you that it's still wet and you can see the colors. If you want them vibrant, you don't water them down as much, you kind of get the gist. Now, I could dry this and let it be just like this, or I could take a paper towel and just barely lighten that up some. And you can see, look at that. And all that did was just absorb some of that color. And then you always want to wipe these edges off where all that color runs together so you don't end up drying this brownish color against your background. And that's pretty much it. You just have your nice little background, and you would dry this and it'll dry fairly flat, and then once you peel up this tape, even though it's wet right now, you can see that it peels up without ruining anything. I will have all the description of, or in the description box below, I will have a list of all the supplies that we used today. And if you want to see a few finished projects using watercolors, I have a couple shares for you. These are older ones that I've made, but you can see I watercolored this background here. And so you can just take a very basic, you don't have to mix the colors together. And then this is with a more mixed background. And you can see how light it is when you really dab on it. This is using actually ink. So I'll show you that in another video too, you guys. So I hope you guys can learn from this, and we'll have fun watercoloring. I would love to see what you guys are doing.